Welcome, Hudson Valley. This is Conor Walsh, host of In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. This week on In Touch, Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence returns. In the past, we focused on martial arts being a tool to help promote bullying prevention, build self-esteem, give opportunities to those with special needs, and to strengthen the family dynamic. Gerald Dunn returns to give us more insight on the world of martial arts. We invite you to join us and listen to a previously recorded conversation between Master Dunn and myself here on In Touch. I'm so proud to announce that In Touch has received another 2 Excellence in Broadcasting Awards from the New York State Broadcasting Association for 2024. In Touch received the award for Outstanding Public Affairs Program or Series for the second year in a row. Not just that, but In Touch also received the award for Outstanding Editorial/Commentary. This recognition would not be possible without all of our phenomenal guests that we learn from and grow with every single week, and of course, you, the listener. Whether you've been listening for a while or you just found us, thank you for taking part in the conversation and staying in touch with what's going on in the Hudson Valley. Because of the awesome success of In Touch over the last year, we are expanding. We're launching a new spin-off series under the In Touch umbrella called Townsquare Spotlight. These spotlights focus on amazing celebrities and leaders passing through the Hudson Valley who are making an impact in pop culture. You can check out our latest spotlights wherever you listen to In Touch. Hello, Hudson Valley. You're listening to another episode of In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. I think we're saying this is the 4th time now that we've had you on. I think you're in competition with Melaine Rodkamp with Duchess Tourism. I think she's been on just as much, if not more, but you're in competition with her. With us today, we have Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence. We've had him on to talk about a number of great topics, but I'm really excited about this, especially because back to school time, there's a lot of kids that are going back, and he's got some very interesting stats about confidence, self-esteem, respect. I'm really looking forward to get into this. I can't speak it all today, so I'm just going to let him do all the talking. Gerald, how are you?
I'm doing great. Good to be back.
Really happy to have you back, and really good timing to have you back as well, because here we are. School's about to get back in session. A few colleges have started already. Elementary, middle, and high school, that's going to get started real soon. And with a new school year comes a lot of anxiety and stress for a lot of people, whether that be the teachers, families, and the students themselves being like, okay, brand new school year. I needed to make a name for myself. I need to do this. I need to do that. Definitely a lot of stress that goes into it. But there's a couple of really big characteristics that we were talking about before we got on the mic. Confidence versus self-esteem, having that respect for others and having that respect for themselves. I think this is such a great topic to talk about this time of year. Before we get into that, though, can you tell us a little bit about Karate for Excellence? And if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned before you just moved, right?
Yes, I'm running my program out of the town of Poughkeepsie Senior Center now. It's going pretty well over there, and I think it's going to be a little bit more convenient for a lot of people.
Nice. Feel a little more central to some of your students?
Yeah, I think so. I'm really excited about talking about confidence and self-esteem. I want to talk about maybe how parents can help their kids develop and maintain high confidence and high self-esteem, and most importantly, maybe understand the difference between the two.
Yeah.
And a lot of people use them interchangeably, but they're not really quite the same thing. Confidence is your belief that you're going to get a positive outcome, and self-esteem is your self-image. It's how you value yourself. And they're not really quite the same thing. And I think this is a good time to talk about it because I have seen research that shows that on their scale, 80% of kids going into kindergarten rank high on their scale for confidence and self-esteem. That's down to 20% by the 3rd grade and down to 5% by high school. And to me, I find that really quite disturbing. So even if you have a kindergartner who's ready to take on the world, how do you help him maintain that level of confidence and that same level of self-esteem that he has for himself or herself and maintain that through adulthood?
Absolutely.
Which, that's really a challenge. I think part of it is, honestly, discipline. Uncertainty breeds anxiety, and anxiety destroys confidence. And so by having rules and enforcing those rules, kids know what's expected of them. And if you know what's expected of them, you can be confident about getting the results that you're looking for.
And one of the things we were talking about before getting onto the mic is the way that certain systems, doesn't have to be school, but school is a good example of this, how they nitpick certain things, what they choose to praise, how they go about it, and how that can really disrupt somebody's self-esteem. And you mentioned all of this really eloquently a moment ago. If you could please repeat that and talk about that for a moment.
I think one of the things that we tend to ignore things when they're going well.
Yeah.
And we only want to address them when they become a problem. I get a lot of parents come in because they want their kids to learn how to focus and pay attention better. And I think a concept that a lot of people don't get sometimes is that kids who struggle need to be praised more frequently. And I use attention span because it's a pretty good example to be able to illustrate what I'm talking about. If you've got a child with an attention span of 5 minutes, that needs to be reinforced every 4 minutes and 45 seconds. If you've got a child with a 2-minute attention span, it needs to be reinforced every 1 minute and 45 seconds. And if you reinforce it frequently enough, then you never have to try to fix it. And because when you're trying to fix it, all of a sudden the kids failed and you're trying to correct it. But if you address it before they fail, number one, it encourages them to continue to put out the effort to pay attention. But then they're successful. It may not be a big success, but they're successful. And what breeds confidence more than success?
Absolutely. And to be able to feel like, hey, I can do this. Or maybe not completely, but it's like, hey, there's some success here. We're chiseling away at this. This is possible. And I think that is so huge with it. With having that self-confidence and self-esteem, as I said, they're not interchangeable. Self-esteem is like the foundation. And then the confidence, you were saying a moment ago, confidence, you can be confident in one situation and not confident in another situation, but if you have the self-esteem as the foundation, then it's like you can pick yourself up and shake it off after.
If you have high self-esteem, you can deal with failure.
Yeah.
If you don't have high self-esteem, then you're devastated by it. And I think that we have to teach kids what's important, how to value themselves. And, everything, what is it they used to say, a wide world of sports, the agony of defeat.
Yeah.
There's nothing between agony and ecstasy to a child. Everything is important. There's nothing is minor to a 5 or 6 year old child. And so they are going to overreact to everything. Striking out in a baseball game, that could be devastating. And, and to me, I think personally, this is my own opinion, I think we put kids in competitive situations too young before they're mature enough to be able to deal with it. I think that we should help get them strong first, then they can compete.
I like that. Teach them foundations, give them a foundation, and then get competitive with it.
And because you think about baseball, even if you're like an awesome baseball player, you're only successful 1/3 of the time.
And that's if you're good.
That's if you're good. Exactly. Yeah. If you're able to get on base 1 out of every 3 times you go up there, that's success. But not when you're 6, necessarily.
Yeah.
Every child is a little bit different, obviously. If you have a kid who's not really assertive, I would not put him in a competitive situation. He needs to experience success first. One thing about martial arts, it's not competitive, and the goal is not to be better than somebody else. The goal is to be better today than you were yesterday. And so it's about personal improvement. I can't control how good you are. If you're more flexible than me, there's nothing I can do about that.
Yeah.
Okay? But I can control improving myself. And I can go through the belts and feel that sense of achievement that goes through that. Achievement is what builds confidence. And then as you achieve more, then your confidence becomes more resilient. Then you can deal with failure. But you have to develop that resilience first. And I think at a young age, that's where the focus should really be, is making them more resilient, making them stronger, giving them as much positive feedback as possible. Now, I will say this about praise. It's praise is not about making them feel good. Praise is about reinforcing positive attributes.
Naturally. But sometimes people overuse it, and you'll get two different ends of the spectrum. You'll get people where they praise a little too often just about anything, and then what does it even mean anymore? And then you got people who are not praising anything at all. As you said, how we focus on the negatives, we don't focus on the positives enough. We got to find the mean somewhere in between.
If you're giving praise that isn't earned, kids are not stupid, and they know. They know if they've earned it or not. And if you're giving praise that's not earned, then it loses all of its value and loses all of its impact. And then it's no longer a tool for you, because praise is a great tool to get kids to do what you want.
Yeah.
Reward. I mean, you get so many people say, well, they should be doing that without being told. I said, well, you can feel that way and be angry all the time, or you can praise them and not be angry all the time.
Damn. Having that healthy communication and really being expressive about it. I think that's the other thing. What you said right there, just should be able to know without being told. As adults, it's like, how many of us always know? In a relationship, how often do you hear about like relationships, husband and wives? The wife is like, oh, he should have known to done this. It was like, if you just tell him it's okay, and then it gets done. Well,
discipline is an interesting subject, because especially when you start talking about kids and kids growing up. When parents, bring a 5, 6-year-old kid to the program, they just want them to behave. They just want them to do what they're told, and so on and so forth. But discipline is all about developing good habits. And I know we might have talked about this on a previous episode, but good habits take years to learn. Bad habits require zero effort whatsoever. And an example I use a lot of time is getting them to brush their teeth. Now, brushing your teeth is not difficult, and it's not even unpleasant. But with most kids, it's 3 or 4 years of telling them to go brush their teeth before they do it without being told. And the goal is to get them from that point where they have to be told to the point where they do it without being told. Then it's a habit, then it stays with them lifelong. And that takes a lot of effort and persistence on the part of the parent. All good habits are like that. People don't understand how long it takes for that to happen. And, one of the things too with developing good habits is in developing discipline, then you can trust them. If your child doesn't have confidence and doesn't have discipline, then the likelihood of them making poor choices is much, much higher. I talk a lot with parents, what do you want your kids to be like when they grow up? And they say, and I said, well, what's your plan? How do you expect to make that happen? And you just get this deer in the head is like, look, because they've never thought about it. They've never thought about it. I mean, I think most parents want to be good parents, but a lot of times they don't know how. It's difficult because, you just have to let your kid get mad at you. And you just have to understand that your job is not to be their friend, and that's the thing. You're not there to shelter them from the consequences of making poor decisions. Because if you do that, they will never develop discipline.
No, unfortunately. And then they're more receptive to peer pressure, influences from outside. And I think that leads into the next thing that I really want to get into. Again, you're listening to In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. We're speaking with Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence, talking a lot about confidence and self-esteem, especially how that's leading into the school year. And how we were talking about with the school year, everybody's going to be moving on into a new grade, possibly a new school, and having a good foundation of self-esteem, it says a lot because they're going to be influenced by their peers. They're going to be influenced by their coaches, influenced by their teachers, and of course, holding up my cell phone right now, influenced by what's on this magical rectangle. Especially when you have people all around you in your classes, it's like, oh, why aren't you listening to this person? Or, oh, why aren't you watching this? Or, oh, all the cool people do this, or all the cool people buy that. There are so much external stimuli telling them to go in one direction and the next. It's so hard to find who they really are. So I would really appreciate if you could keep going into self-esteem, establishing that, and what that means to find themselves rather than just be a product of others.
That's kind of what our program is designed to do.
Perfect.
Even good parents need help, just for the reasons you were stating. There's so many outside influences. And I think one of the ways that you can help your kids develop self-esteem is you need to earn their respect. You can't do that by being indulgent. I read another study. This I found really interesting. They did a survey of teenagers, and they found that teenagers with indulgent parents were actually envious of the teenagers with the strict parents. Because what they found was that kids don't perceive indulgence as love. They perceive it as a lack of caring, that you don't care enough about them to make them do the right thing and to stand your ground and enforce the rules. The kids with the strict parents understood, even when they got mad at them, they understood that their parents cared about them enough to make them do what they were supposed to do, even when they're pitching a fit, which is hard to do for a lot of people. And I understand now both parents work. It is so much easier to cave in. It is so much easier to cave in. But you have to realize that when you do, you are training them to misbehave. And remember, we talked about bad habits. They require no effort. And so it doesn't take much training to train them to misbehave, but it takes a lot to train them to behave properly. And also, too, if you have rules and you enforce them, that makes your kids feel safe, makes them feel safe. People don't understand, like even in school, what's their favorite question? The one they know the answer to. They don't want to be asked a question they don't know the answer to. And that's anxiety. And so enforce the rules, and then I would also say part of learning discipline is, as they get older, give them responsibility. Make the kids earn your trust. Because if you don't give them responsibility, and then how do you know if you can trust them when they go out with their friends?
Yeah, you never know. At that point, it's like it's kind of the crapshoot by then.
And one of the things that I teach the kids is you have to earn the respect of your parents, that they will love you no matter what happens. But respect has to be earned. And then the parents, they have to earn the respect of the kids. And that's when I think you have a healthy dynamic, is when everybody knows their place. The parents are the authority figure. And if you're not, you're going to lose the respect of your kids. And then you lose the influence over them. And then they're totally susceptible to outside influences if they don't respect you.
Yeah. And I think they're more receptive to the outside influences when they're kind of going back to what you're saying about the praising, not enforcing the strengths. And what you're saying about the responsibilities. I remember working as a camp counselor for many years. I can think of like 5 kids, like off the top of my head. I'm not going to say their names for their sake. But there were 5 kids who were notorious troublemakers at the camp, and nobody knew what to do with them. So eventually what I started doing is like, all right, you're going to be my helper. I'm going to need you to do this, 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 and this. Do you think you can do them for me? And I knew that those were things that I knew that they were good at, something that they could achieve, something they can be successful at, and something they can be proud of. And as they accepted those responsibilities and accepted those roles, the troublemaking aspect died down as they embraced that responsibility, and they felt good because they realized and noticed that they were doing good. So I think also with the responsibility aspect of it, as you're talking about, definitely give them the responsibilities of something that hones into their strengths.
And and plus too, you brought up an interesting point, because kids crave recognition.
Yeah.
And my guess is that these kids that you were talking about had learned that they get recognition by acting out.
Yes, absolutely.
And probably when they were doing right, nobody paid attention to them. See, that's kind of the point that I'm trying to make, is like, if you only react to them when they're misbehaving, then you're training them to misbehave, because they'd rather have you yelling at them than ignoring them.
Any kind of contact.
And when they started getting recognition for doing the tasks that you assigned to them, then they didn't have to misbehave anymore, because they were getting what they want in a different way.
Yeah.
But the result they were getting is the same. Their goal was the same. You just gave them a different way.
A good positive outlet to be able to grow now and be good for everybody.
And, now if you hadn't recognized them for doing that, then that behavior would have started to recur again.
Yeah, slip and fade, and then you just lose the progress.
And another thing too that I think it might be very useful to parents at home is I've had this happen all the time. Is that specifically? I remember how one lady telling me, she had a 14-year-old. Now the 14-year-old wasn't in my program; her younger child was.
Okay.
And she was saying, I don't know what to do with him. I mean, I take away his Game Boy. He gets a bad report card or he doesn't get his homework done. I take away his Game Boy and tell him until he straightens out, he doesn't get it back, and he'll straighten that out, and then I'll give it back to him, and then he'll backslide again. And I said, you're not handling it right. Just don't give him the Game Boy. Make him earn it every day.
Yeah.
So say, if you want your Game Boy, this is what you have to do. You have to get your homework done by 6 o'clock, then you get the Game Boy. And make him do it every day. Because when you took it away, he had a motivation. He had a reason to do his homework. When you gave it back to him, the reason was gone.
Yeah.
So give him a reason every day.
Give him the goals. Give him the checkpoints. Give those means to create the good habits.
And create the good habits. And then I imagine you do that over a certain period of time, then you're not having to fight anymore. We have to kind of look at it kind of from their perspective and understand what's important to them and not necessarily what's important to us.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
And if the Game Boy is important to them, well, that's leverage. Why do you want to keep giving up your leverage over and over again? Use it every day.
Yep.
And it's the same thing. Like if you got a kid who's struggling, then have him do, when he's doing his homework. I mean, because some kids struggle with it. That's just the way that it is. Give him a break every once in a while. If he's been doing his homework and he's been diligent at it, I mean, let's go have a cup of hot chocolate or something, and then we'll come back to it. But, just don't stand there with the whip, and let him, give him some kind of make it as positive an experience as you can, because it's a whole lot easier to make them want to than it is to make them do it when they don't want to.
Yeah.
And you have to look at it from their perspective, what will make them want to? Well, obviously with that 14-year-old, what made him want to was his Game Boy.
Yeah. Having some kind of positive reinforcement goes such a long way.
And think about it. You wouldn't go to work every day if you weren't getting paid.
No, sir.
And so we all do things for rewards. It's just a different reward.
Yeah.
And that's just the way that everybody's mind works. Yeah. Nobody does nothing for no reason.
There are goals. The goals may change over life, but there is always that kind of reward system that we're going for. Absolutely. Again, you're listening to In Touch, Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley's award-winning public affairs and issues program. We've been speaking with Chief Master Gerald Dunn from Karate for Excellence, really honing in on confidence, self-esteem, and just getting that solid foundation for positive change and growth. And this isn't just great for school time. This is great for pretty much any time to help you grow and become the person that you want to be, whether that be a kid, become a good adult, or somebody who is an adult that wants to make some positive change in their life. I think you can take what we've said today and apply it in so many situations. So, Gerald, for those who are interested in learning more about you, learning more about Karate for Excellence, where can they go to find more info?
They can go to my website, karateforexcellence.com, or they can call me at 845-462-0624 and be more than happy to talk with them and answer any questions they might have.
Terrific. So before we wrap up this episode, Gerald, do you have any last little nugget for the Hudson Valley listening audience today?
I think that we just want to try to make these kids as strong as possible. There's so much anger in the world now, and I think confidence and respect and discipline are kind of one of the ways that we can kind of alleviate that. You see it everywhere. You see it in the media, you see it on television, and I think that I try to teach the values that help people be successful, that help these kids feel good within themselves and not measuring themselves by other standards. I think when we talked about self-esteem, If you have high self-esteem, then you're capable of pleasing yourself. If you don't have high self-esteem, then you're not capable of pleasing yourself. You're depending on pleasing other people to try to make yourself happy. And and I think it's important that they develop that ability to learn how to please themselves. Then they won't be angry.
Yeah. To be able to have that self-assurance that they can do it, so they won't be angry with themselves. They won't find that anxiety. They won't need to constantly have to please others. They can find that peace within themselves. And that's great. And I think that's terrific. And if you want to learn that, or if your child wants to learn that, or you think this would be a good thing for you, your family dynamic, definitely hit up Gerald Dunn, hit up Karate for Excellence. And there's a lot of good things that you can get from it from an individual standpoint and a family dynamic standpoint, which we've talked about on other episodes. Check out our previous episodes on the family dynamic. But Gerald, thank you so much for being here on this episode of In Touch.
It's been a pleasure. Glad to be back.
Happy to have you. This has been this week's edition of In Touch, the award-winning public affairs and issues program that runs across Townsquare Media, the Hudson Valley radio stations. We want to give a big thank you to Chief Master Gerald Dunn. For more information, please visit karateforexcellence.com. Remember, that's the number 4, karateforexcellence.com. Of course, all links and information can be found in the description of this episode. Whether you've been listening for a while or you just joined us, thank you. You can find In Touch episodes new and old on your favorite streaming services like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, and more. That and listen on demand with your Townsquare radio station mobile app. Of course, you can still find all articles and audio under the In Touch tab on this radio station's app and website. And don't forget, we're also on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram at InTouch_HV. I've been your host, Conor Walsh. Until next time, stay curious, keep an open mind, and as always, I'm glad we get to spend some time